Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 299. One away from the big 300. Crazy times. I'm joined today by my co-host, Jordan Tyra. Jordan, welcome back.
Hello again.
And also joining us, Luke Taylor. Luke, how are we doing?
Really good. No, really pleasure to be on, guys. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to you both.
Awesome, mate. Well, it's exciting times, I know, for you because, well, I'll get into it. Well, last season was a pretty big season when we started
very much so,
your role. So it'll be really interesting to reflect on that, but then also looking ahead to this season too.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
We'll get into that in a second, but we always start in the same place, and that's on you, your background. So do you want to kick us off on a little story and lead us up to what you're doing currently?
100%. I'm very conscious that we don't want to kind of talk about this all day, and this might be when people are listening to podcasts, it's a bit they're fast forward. So very conscious of that. But I've been very fortunate to kind of work in elite sport, professional sport across multiple sports for kind of the last 17 years. Start way back when 2007, 2006 I started my undergraduate at Sheffield Hallam. 2007, a man I think you've probably had on this podcast, Kevin Paxton, he's been around the game for pretty much forever, came and did a lecture at Hallam around work experience, internships, and it was like, if you're interested, 7 o'clock Monday morning, we'll see you in the gym kind of thing. And it was pretty much like, go for it, essentially. And myself and my housemate, Ed Harper, who works at Liverpool, we were fortunate enough to get the roles at Sheffield United, and we kind of were thrust in at the deep end, essentially. I think I had the under-14s when I first started. I think I'd ever delivered a warm-up in my life, let alone been around footballers. So it was kind of sink or swim moment for me. But I thought it was brilliant. Managed to do that for 2 years during my undergraduate degree. And then a couple of years out, didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career. Thought maybe a primary school teacher. That definitely isn't for me. And I stayed as far away from that as possible. And I went down to my local football club, Oxford United Football Club at the time, and got chatting to the academy manager kind of on a whim, essentially, and was like, do you need any help? Essentially, I'll kind of come in and do whatever. And he was like, well, we haven't got anyone with our 18s. What are you doing tomorrow? And I guess the rest is history. Essentially, I've kind of been in sport since then. So that was 2011. I had 3 fantastic years at Oxford United. The first time round in the academy, kind of initially as an intern, and then with the youth team. And then when I left, I was head of academy sports science. It was a brilliant kind of learning curve for me. It was the kind of the start of the EPPP. I sat through the first ever audit the football club did, and for Jordan, I'm sure you sat through a couple of audits in your time. It was a pretty stressful experience. Definitely as a 23, 24-year-old, we really didn't know what he was doing, but we kind of muddled through and we got there. Whilst I was there, a role came up at British University Sport, or Bucks as it was back then, to go to the World University Games with the GB women's football team. And I applied. It was a voluntary position to go to the World University Games in Kazan in Russia. Was fortunate enough to be selected. I was interviewed at Wembley Stadium. Talk about intimidating, like, again, young practitioner, relatively inexperienced, and kind of went and did that. And it was fortunate enough to get the role. And at the time, the head coach of that role was also within the English FA, a lady called Kay Cossington. She's now the technical director on the women's side. So I did all the prep for Kazan. We had a ridiculously talented team. Most of that squad have gone and been senior internationals within the English squad, and we won gold. We beat Brazil. No, we beat Brazil in the final. Frank Kirby scored a hat trick. It was incredible. And off the back of that, and this is kind of a reoccurring story within my journey. It's very much right place, right time, and it's building relationships opposed to maybe that traditional application process. So Kay also headed up the talent pathway at the English FA at the time. And she was like, do you fancy coming to do a bit more with the English FA? So I started doing some weekend regional work within the English FA alongside my work at Oxford for kind of a year or so. And that kind of picked up as I went along, and I kind of became the substitute teacher at the English FA on the women's side. And I kind of would fill in on an under-15s camp, on under 17s camp. Was fortunate enough to go to an under-19s Euros, kind of one of my first kind of major competition. The normal S&C coach with that age group was on paternity leave, so I kind of stepped in, and again, right place, right time. I could kind of jump in and say, yeah, let's go for it. And that kind of continued. I was fortunate enough to work for the English FA for 8 years as a consultant in various age groups. I think by the time I left, I did every age group across the women's program, a few on the men's side, 2 European Championships, 2 World Cups. Like absolutely phenomenal. Like I'm a very patriotic Englishman. Like to stand and to sing a national anthem, like don't really think it gets anything better. But during that period of time, I'd left Oxford United. I was very conscious about the fact that I didn't want to pigeonhole myself as only ever working in football. I had a mentor at the time, a lady called Michelle Pearson, and she was like very much so, you know, multi-sport, English Institute of Sport is the way. I applied for a lot of roles there and was unsuccessful. My local university, Oxford Brookes, were starting to start a talent program. They had some TAS funding. So again, I kind of orchestrated a coffee with the director of sport and managed to kind of come in on a little bit of a part-time basis, build that up with a colleague called John Harmon, who's now at Trinity College in Dublin. And we kind of built this performance program, again, from part-time members of staff to full-time members of staff. And that for me was such a massive learning curve. You know, one hour I'd be working with rugby league players, then I'd work with the men's cricket team or the hockey team or the swimmers, volleyball, lacrosse. I managed to work with goalball, which like blew me away, like working with blind athletes in the gym, like phenomenal. And again, that again kind of transitioned, again, right place, right time. The university was developing a strength and conditioning strand within the academic side. So I started doing some guest lecturing, associate lecturing as such. And that kind of built, I transitioned slowly from S&C coach to lecturer. And whilst I was doing that, alongside that, still working at the English FA, that kind of went all the way through. I was fortunate enough to work at Oxford Brookes for 9 years and then consult various other places. I guess some kind of key highlights for that were I took a secondment from the English FA to work for the New Zealand FA. And again, that was through a connection from Oxford. The youth team manager, who's now the first team manager at Oxford, was the manager of the New Zealand national team. We managed to go to do all the preparations and then go to the under-20s World Cup. We were in a group with Norway and Haaland. Haaland won the golden boot in that tournament. And New Zealand were fortunate to beat them 2-0, so he didn't score against us that day. But like completely different from a cultural perspective, like blew me away, phenomenal. And then 2021, still working at Oxford Brookes at the time, a colleague from the English FA, a lady called Gemma Granger, who's now the Norway manager, she got the Wales job. So I went as head of physical performance to Wales with the senior women and did 3 fantastic years with them, kind of building a program on the women's side from seniors all the way down to kind of the pathway age groups. And then in February, kind of leading up to now, I had a kind of a bit of a crossroads stay with the manager Gemma or Des, the manager of New Zealand. He was the youth team manager at Oxford, then the New Zealand manager rang and said, you know, what do you reckon? There's an exciting project at Oxford United, and here we are.
Brilliant, mate. What a great breakdown as well, because I know you said before about people skipping this part of the podcast, but a lot of feedback that we actually get on this is that people really love to hear different journeys and different stories of how people have got to where they are. And I think the common theme with it all, which we'll probably come on to in a little bit, is relationships and things that we've spoke about already. That obviously becomes quite apparent in creating opportunities for yourself, doesn't it? Just before we get into the other topics, last season, promotion season, talk us through that, how that season ended up.
So, I'm an Oxford-born guy. I was brought up, 3 miles from the old ground. Like my family are Oxford fans. My dad's a season ticket holder, my brother's a season ticket holder. So to be honest, before even that, I rang when the kind of job offer came up. I rang my dad and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back into full-time sport. I've got 2 young daughters. And he's like, what are you on about? This is a different job. This is the job. So it was almost like he was like, you need to do it. And to be honest, I'm so glad I did. And to be honest, I always would have done. The project was too exciting. So I arrived in February, and it was, the team had gone through a few kind of ups and downs in terms of results, but they were there or thereabouts in and around the playoffs. And I was fortunate enough to be involved for the last 16 games, and came into a department with 2 fantastic coaches, like 2 of the best kind of fitness coaches I've ever worked with, in terms of Chris Short, who has been in the game forever. He's a fantastic practitioner. He's so charismatic. Like if he talks, people listen. And then Another guy called Dwayne, who again, brilliant practitioner. He really is the energy in the room, and it was very much like coming into an environment. And I think we'll talk about this maybe later on about transitioning into a new role. But was fortunate enough to work with these two guys, and then we kind of went on this magic run essentially those last few games, and then last day of the season we kind of managed to. We were 7th beginning of the day, and we ended up finishing 5th. Played Peterborough in a 2-legged semi-final, beaten 1-0 at home, and then scraped a 1-1 draw away from home with this ferocious atmosphere at Peterborough. Yeah, and then I guess the kind of Wembley week, that week would probably stay with me for the rest of my life in terms of careers. Like I hope that there'll be other successes going on in my career as we go, but to work with a squad and a group of staff in your hometown team to take them to Wembley and then be successful, absolutely incredible. Like you sitting in a dugout at Wembley, 2-0 up against Bolton with a minute to go, like that will stay with me forever. And then we were fortunate. We did again, most ridiculous thing ever. I'm an S&C coach, like very much trying to stay in the background as such. But we did an open top bus parade on the Monday after Wembley. Oxford's not a very big place. There was like 50,000 people in the streets. Like the streets were yellow and blue. It was like being in Turin, like flares everywhere. This double-decker bus. It's phenomenal. And but as I said, stay with me forever. That week was just incredible.
I think that's important though, from a practitioner perspective, isn't it? Because you can sort of hear the passion when you're speaking about that as a fan as well. But as coaches, there's a lot of ups and downs throughout a season, across careers. So I think it's really important, isn't it, that when you do have that success or that experience like that, it's really important to draw as much as you can from it and sort of appreciate it.
100%. So like we use our anchor as a staff group. So I'd been in the job maybe 3 weeks. We played Bolton away live on Sky, and it was the first game that I'd been involved in that was live on Sky. And lots of my friends and family were like, you're the club are on telly tonight. Really looking forward to watching your game. We played Bolton, lost 5-0. It was like the depths, like it was low. It was like the next few days were really hard to pick the players back. We had a really good meeting with the staff, really good meeting with the players, and it was like we will use this as our anchor to make the difference. And you think 16 games later, the players, they stuck to the game plan, were phenomenal and beat the same side 2-0 at Wembley. So, as you said, we don't get many great days in this sport in terms of results or experiences. Now, I feel very fortunate to be able to do what I do in terms of physical preparation in sport, but in terms of those really joyous moments, we don't get many. So I think it's important to remember them, and I think that that one there will probably sit at the top of the tree for a long time.
No, definitely. Wanted to talk about the transfer from your previous roles and your experiences as well. So experiences as a lecturer going into your position now, but also experiences from working in different sports as well, because I think that's important, isn't it, in terms of different backgrounds. So what are some things that you would say have carried over into your current role?
Yeah, so I think I've been thinking about this recently, definitely. So for me, all of the experiences I've had in terms of any sport I've worked in, any role I've worked in, it's a people-based business. Ultimately, we work with people. We ultimately need to be really good communicators. We need to be able to articulate our points with clarity, be concise, do what we need to do, and try and make a difference. So if I think about it from, and I guess I'm going to strip it back to the beginning, if that's all right. And I was really fortunate years ago to go on a skills for performance course with the EIS. So you applied, did this 4-day course, and it was kind of to expose you to what the EIS looks like. And on the first day, they did an insights profile. So an insights profile around personalities, and they gave you a colour or colours essentially. And there's 12 S&C coaches, some fantastic practitioners actually. You stand on a colour wheel, and every single person on that group sat in this kind of like analytical blue and deep thinking green. And that then maybe this is 10, 12 years ago, this was kind of what S&C coaches in my head looked like. And then I sat on the complete opposite side. I was a yellow red. So I get my energy from other people. I always have done, always will do. I love talking to people. So apologies, stop me at any time if I'm rambling. But I sat in this yellow red. So yellow being this sunshine yellow, trying to see the best in things, and then this fiery red. So like, you've got this undertone of, okay, if we need to go, we can. And I was a little bit like, well, that straight away got this massive imposter syndrome. Am I in the right place? Am I doing the right career? But a former mentor of mine was very much like, no, stick to your guns. This is who you are. This is your personality. Stick with it. And every job I've always gone to, I'm always like, well, do we need to change to suit the environment? And again, I stick back to what my mentor said, and he was very much like, no, stick to your guns, stick to who you are, because you can't fake it for that long. And to kind of go back to your first question, for me, it's all about being a people person. Can you build relationships quickly and try and articulate change? If I think about life in academia, you might have a lecture, I might have a first year lecture, 200 people, 200 students talking about functional anatomy. It's not the most exciting thing. It's very important that everyone has a good understanding of it, but it's how you build rapport with those students, how you build rapport and how you articulate your point to make it meaningful and make it matter to them. And then if I think about other roles I've had where it might be in an international football environment where you only see players for 10 days at a time and ultimately they're not your players, it's how can you build a relationship with them and their backroom team at their club to, okay, I'm taking care of this person for the next 12 days in an international window or 30 days at a major tournament. How can we build a relationship that there's mutual trust between me and the athlete and then me and the S&C coach or the physio back at the club? Because that's so important. If all we care about is, well, we need to do this many sprints today, we need to hit this many high-speed meters, we need to do these exercises in the gym, it doesn't really matter if we haven't got a relationship with that individual. If they don't buy into what we're selling and we haven't built strong rapport, it's essentially pointless. And then thinking about those other sports, some of those sports I've worked in, they might be weekend warriors or Bucks athletes, only play on a Wednesday, they love a night out, but they want to be successful at what they do. It's educating them around the importance of physical preparation. What small wins can we create to make longitudinal change? We want these athletes to be, physically active when they're 40, 50 years old, if I think about those weekend warriors. And then those kind of, I'll never forget it, the goalball athlete I worked with. So goalball is a sport for individuals who are blind. And the first session I had with him, I was almost a little bit like, not disrespectful, but almost like underestimated what he could do. So it was, the first thing he said to me was, Luke, do you mind if I train without any shoes and socks on? And I was like, of course. And I'd had all these worries about he was going to walk into a squat rack or he was going to do whatever. And he's like, I see the gym through my feet. And he almost walked around the gym and he bumped into a few things. I was like, oh, can I help? He's like, no, leave me alone. I'm fine. So it's almost, and it was within 2 sessions, he was knowing where, he would walk over to the chalk, do it. He'd find the clips. And I was like, this is phenomenal. Like, it blew me away. And it was almost that building a relationship that he wanted to trust me, I wanted to trust him, but also allowing the athlete to fail essentially and be able to be, okay, well, I'm not just going to put these restraints on you, just go. And those kind of things have stayed with me as I've gone back into what now working in football again, is like, we have no idea maybe what these athletes are capable of. So let's work with them, not against them.
That's a pretty incredible story.
So good. No, I was just going to say, Luke, like, I think you've hit so many nails on the heads there. You might have seen I was just nodding along the whole time. And I just want to say, like, for practitioners listening, certainly if you're a younger practitioner, there's so much in that. Rewind, go over it, because genuinely, like the disc profile you're talking about, so the personality profile, I got introduced to that at Bournemouth from Francesca Dean, who's a psychologist here now with the Physical Performance Hub as well. Excellent stuff. You should definitely do that to find out about who you are. And I just wanted to just double down on that point of, like, it doesn't matter what color you are. So I was really yellow and really green. So the analytical side, which is that blue side, I'm not, that's not me, data and stuff like that. I can do it because I have to, but I don't really want to. So, I have to force myself to do the sports sciencey stuff and sit behind a screen. But when it's coming to working with people, I'm buzzing around and I'm energetic and I get that. And as soon as you understand that's you, like you were saying, Luke, it unlocks ways of working. And like you were saying, you develop those relationships through firstly understanding yourself, don't you? And then just experiencing different environments. So again, young practitioners, hopefully listening to this, genuinely rewind to that last section and just really listen to it, because you can take some bits from that. Search disc profile. I think it's called disc profile. Correct me if I'm wrong. On Google, find out a little bit about yourself if you can access it or whatever. Just find out a little bit about your personality and how that's going to affect you as a coach, and then just go and build some relationships, like Luke's saying, because that's a brilliant little snippet of how you can develop relationships and work with players from all walks of life, every athlete. And that's just going to help you. It builds your confidence more than anything, doesn't it, Luke? That you can, 100%, you feel like you can be picked up and just dropped into an environment, regardless of sport, regardless of age, regardless of gender, quality. Are they professional athletes, semi-professional, grassroots, and go, right, let's do a session, let's go for it, let's do something. And those experiences are just so powerful. So yeah, like genuinely, people need to listen to that. Really.
I love what you said as well about sort of sticking by your guns and sticking by the approach that you've taken. And I know that will be molded into different positions slightly within different sports and different roles, but there's a lot within that as well, isn't there? Do you think that's it's going to be easier for coaches that are more experienced, isn't it? Because coaches with less experience are probably going to doubt things a lot more. They're probably feeling like they need to change. But what would you say to those early stage of career coaches in regards to that? Because it's going to be hard for them to just say, well, stick by your guns, isn't it? Because they might not really know what their style is and everything yet. But what sort of advice would you give them at that stage of their career?
So I guess before we kind of go into that, I think the important thing to think about is it's really tiring to not be yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you think about it, we said about we know that working in elite sport, working in any sport, the days are long, they're brilliant, but the days are long. We do lots of days. So you can't be on if you're faking it all the time. So it will come crumbling down quite quickly, and staff around you will notice, players notice everything. So or athletes notice everything. So you need to be consistent. So it's almost understanding. So when I say be yourself, I think me with my wife and my 2 children, or me with my friends, that's one side of who I am. And then me as a coach, it's not completely different, but it's definitely not the same. My professional outlook is going to be different to me as a father, as a friend, as a husband. But it's understanding, okay, this is who I am, and this is who I am going to be consistently. As you said, I think part of that we can't learn quickly. That has to come from experience, time coaching, time working with others. But also it's practicing that. So almost getting used to how you want to communicate with other people. And it might be scenario based. And I always found this at university, students struggle to engage in scenario based learning because they're always like, well, they're my mates. What I can't be a coach around them. It's embarrassing. But that's a great place to fail. It's a great place to learn. It's a great place to get it wrong, because again, athletes find out pretty quickly if you haven't got the knowledge to back up what you're going to do, and 2, if you haven't got the confidence to deliver your knowledge. So for students listening, please engage in those practical sessions, because lecturers put them on for a reason, and it's to make it uncomfortable for you. But start to practice there. And if you're out and you want to look, every grassroots, I'm sure you boys have spoken about this so many times, every grassroots club and any sport in a country wants help. So go and practice with the under 8s, because if you can coach an under 8 or under 9, an adult is easy, because it's like herding cats, isn't it? So the senior athletes are a walk in a park once you've dealt with an under 11 volleyball team.
Talking of herding cats, as a fellow parent, what would be, we talked about transferable skills, as a dad to a coach and being in your position, there's going to be a lot of transfers there as well, isn't there?
Oh, huge. Like, I'm fortunate. I've got 2 brilliant daughters, 5 and 2. All they think that daddy does is a water boy, because that's all he's ever said, ever seen me do. That's all they perceive. I'm the guy that hands out the water. They've been to a couple of games, and that's what I do. That's fine. But I guess the one big learning I take from being a parent is patience. And sometimes I definitely don't have it with my children, and I apologize to my wife and my kids for that. But they'll test you on a daily basis, and they tested me before this call. I was conscious that I needed to get everyone to bed and everyone to sleep before we jumped on. So yeah, patience. Like, players will test you, athletes will test you, they'll ask questions, And my 2-year-old daughter is at the stage where everything is why. Players will be the same. One, I need the answer. I need to understand. If I don't know the answer, I need to say, I don't know the answer to that right now, but I will go and find out for you. So I can't lie to my kids. I'm never going to lie to them, but I also can't lie to my athletes. If I don't know the answer to something, I can't try and, I don't want to swear, but can't try and blag it. So it's like, no, I don't know the answer to that. I'll go away and find out, because again, it will bite you. And again, the young practitioner in me has probably tried to blag it and been found out. So it's patience and honesty are the two big ones I take from being a parent to being a coach, 100%.
Brilliant. On being employable, we've talked about the importance of relationships, creating those opportunities. So that sort of gets one foot in the door to an interview. Might not be at Wembley like yours was, maybe somewhere else. But in terms of it, when we're speaking to coaches maybe a little bit further into their career now, I don't know what the up-to-date numbers are on the amount of coaches going for interview and going for jobs. You'll probably have a much better idea than us. But you've got to stand out, haven't you?
Yeah, 100%.
There's got to be something that makes you stand out. And now that isn't a degree, that isn't a master's for a lot of people. That's not even PhD for a lot of people now either. Like, what is it from your perspective as an employer, maybe sitting down and taking on staff, which I know that's some experience that you've had. What is it on the personal side that you sort of see that stands out for coaches?
Yeah. So it's actually something I would deliver to my students quite regularly about, what are you doing to make yourself different? And I always talk to students about, the fact that students always say they're really busy. You will never be quieter, have more time ever than being an undergraduate student. I understand cost of living, you've got to have a part-time job, but there's always going to be time. I'm just thinking, for both of you working in elite sport, working full-time, finding time is impossible. So utilize as much time as early on. I always talk to first-year students, if you want to be a coach, let's get at it now. So get as much experience with as many teams as you can under the belt. And it goes to Steve Ingham. So Steve Ingham writes a brilliant letter. And he rewrites it every year, a letter to the 10,000. So that's kind of what he's saying about the numbers. 10,000 undergraduates graduating every year in the UK alone from a sports science-based course. Add in your 4,000 master students and however many PhD students who are, not all of them want to be a coach, but a lot of those are going to flood the market, and they are ultimately competing against people like me. Like I may be applying for jobs, or I'm not going anywhere, don't worry, but maybe applying for jobs. And I always use the stat because I kept a record of it myself. So from when I graduated my undergraduate degree to before I got the Oxford job, I'd applied for probably, 500 jobs. Out of those jobs from applications, I'm not getting many of those, if any. All of my jobs realistically have been building a relationship, showing my credibility, recommendations from others to get to that. I've got to interview stage, and I've got to the final interview stage of a couple of jobs. One of them, in my eyes, was my dream job and still will be my dream job. I didn't get it. That's fine. Hopefully one day. But what I found is that employability, and I think people talk about this all the time, is you need to know your onions. You need really good, and I think we kind of forgot that maybe for a little bit. We spoke about soft skills, which I think probably are very important, but we need to know our onions. You need to know your anatomy and physiology. You need to know your biomechanics. You need to understand probably now more and more around the tech. So force plates, NOR boards, force frames, GPS data, how to manipulate data, how to present data. That for me is a non-negotiable. But then the soft skills are probably what's going to get you in the door. So building going to events like what you guys put on, going to the UKSEA conference, going to the any conference really, going to the basic student conference, building a network, building relationships, building a relationship with your academic staff, your lecturers, because they have links. Like at Oxford now, we're looking for students to come in and want to be work experience students, interns during their undergraduate degree. So I'm asking for recommendations. So they need to know their basics. But then also when you get in the door, know how to take a warm-up, know how to put on a basic strength session, know how to have a conversation with an athlete. And again, that links back to what you do in your practical sessions at university, what you're doing with your grassroots clubs, because that's a great place to learn and fail. Because you get found out pretty quickly in an academy or in a first team environment.
I think there's so many points in there again, not in a way, but honestly, for students listening, that's just gold dust, isn't it? Because like you say there are clubs around the country, like literally before we came on air, didn't we? I just had a local grassroots JPL team in the facility here, 13, 14, like local kids wanted to just get better and improve, and I think to add on that point you just made there, Luke, was as a student, you're not going to go in and work, with the New England manager at the World Cup. You're going to probably have to start somewhere, and you're probably going to start grassroots and then maybe build up, and eventually you might get your foot in the door for an internship or a placement opportunity. So almost realize you've got to take those steps and don't think, I'm going to go in straight in a Premier League club. You're not, because like you say, the less 10,000 is a great way of putting it. Put yourself out there. Like what's, and I love that, because I've done a few associate lecturers myself and gone and give guest lectures. And when I've done the exact same thing, and I recommend people who are certainly like 2 or 3 years into their career, they might have graduated and they're still applying for a few jobs and things, keep a note of how many. I've got a big folder of job applications. I fortunately haven't had to add anything for it for a while now, but I did all the stats on it. And at these guest lectures, I put that on the screen on the stats, and you kind of watch the faces of the students just drop a little bit when they realize, actually, this isn't that easy to get into. And, if you're doing it to a third-year lecture, also third-year student, and they haven't started any of that grassroots yet, or they haven't gone and got any of the courses done yet, level 1 and level 2 coaching badge, by the way, is all online these days, I believe. So, back in my day, you had to go and do the coaching. What's stopping you, sort of thing? So there's more information on the internet than ever before, and like you say, loads of these students are going, I'm swamped. I'm getting home and I've got pre-drinks at 6. You know what I mean? And it's like, come on, be serious about it for a second. So no, again, students listening, youngsters listening, if you're younger in your career, like, you've got to put yourself out there, innit? And it goes down to those soft skills, like you say. The onions, I like that phrase. Yeah, that'll get you to an interview. That'll get you the competencies that you need. But it's the soft skills and developing those experiences and being able to say, well, actually, I've got experience of working on those grassroots teams. I really help these players, and this, and then someone will go, yeah, I like him or her. Let's get them, give them a shot. So yeah, really, really good. How do you find it with the students though? Like when you talk about the practical sessions and stuff that you're working with, do you spot some of them? You go, they're going to go far. They don't mind putting themselves out there, or have you found some who might start off really shy and actually, develop and grow? Is it like they've got it, they haven't, or is that a transfer detailed skill?
So I think you have a bit of both. You have the kind of bravado, brash. I'm the captain of the women's football team, or the men's hockey team. I've got a bit about me, and I want to be an S&C coach. And they automatically have some leadership skills. They can deliver. They can talk to people. They're sociable, and straight away you're almost drawn to them. But sometimes that shrinking wallflower who's very academic, very bright, also wants to be an S&C coach. If you give them a little bit of care and attention, you can really, they can really, really thrive. And I think it goes back to when we talk about, personality profiling. People can be completely different personalities. Like the 3 of us who work in my team, we're very different people. And, we might have 8 or 9 players in our squad that resonate to us, because not everyone is going to want to talk and associate and be coached or just talk to the same kind of personalities. So I think it takes a whole range of practitioners, and I've worked with completely, huge ends of the spectrum in terms of types of personality that have become successful coaches. So I think, in a way, yes, you do see those leaders come to the forefront quite early, but also it's bear in mind that anyone can be successful if they want to be. But it's almost that confidence to engage in the process, because they're my mate, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to talk them through how to do an A-skip because, as you said, I'm going to pre-drinks with them later. Well, forget that. Let's worry about being a better coach for an hour, and then we'll worry about the WKD Blues or whatever we drink now.
Hard stuff.
I always reflect on it from early experiences with coaching. I feel like for certain people, there's an element of like a fake it till you make it sort of thing, isn't there, as well?
Yeah.
Where not in terms of like thinking that you know it all, but just in terms of how you hold yourself and how you are in front of people. And like you said before, if people question you on something, you're not just going to blag it and make an answer up, but you can have that conversation with someone and go, I'll find out. I will find out. But I think there's definitely something within that, isn't there, where how people hold themselves and that initial confidence. And like you see such differences with that, don't you? And I don't know what that is, whether that is personality type or whether it's experience or what. It's funny how people are so different.
I love that. I love that as well. By the way, there's a brilliant photo for people. The fake it till you make it. It's a goldfish with a fake shark fin strapped onto its back. And just says, be brave, even when you're not, just be brave. And it's like, that is you, isn't it? When you start in your career, just go, right, I don't know all the answers yet, but this is where I want to go. I'm pretty sure. Step in the door and off you go. So yeah, I love that.
I guess two little quick stories about that. And one of them actually was today. So my first day at the club in February, I was asked to talk in front of the players, who I was, what I was trying to do. And it was very much like, you guys have, some of the lads in the room had been professional footballers longer than I've been an adult. So it's almost like, you guys know your bodies really well. It's not a one-way street. This is a conversation. We'll talk to each other about what works for you, what I think is best. There'll be times where there are some non-negotiables, but it's like this is a group effort. It's not a dictatorship, and I think hopefully that got the lads on side a little bit. But also, when you said fake it till you make it, and going back to our earlier point of being honest, today I tried to warm up and it was horrific, and we went into week 3 of pre-season. We've gone into some condition afterwards. I said, lads, I'll hold my hands up. That was awful. I'll wear that. We won't be doing that one again. And they were like, one of them actually said to me, I really appreciate the humility. Thanks for owning it. And it was almost like, let's not be too proud here. We're all just people trying to get everyone better. So if I got it wrong, let's wear it. Let's don't try and hide it. Because again, I think they probably would have not changed their opinion, but maybe thought, he thought that was good, and it definitely wasn't.
There's a lot in that, isn't there? That honesty. But that's that again. We always speak about relationships on here, but there's a reason that we speak about it so much because of how important it is, and that comes down to that again, doesn't it? That's like a mutual trust and respect.
Yeah.
The fact that you can do that to them, but then they can turn around back to you and have that conversation. I think it's really powerful. That.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's knowing your players. There's a player who plays with us who's played at the highest level, played the Premier League, played in the Champions League, and he came up to me towards the back end of the season, and it was very much like, I always want to know my players well. We've got a lot of dads in the group, a lot of young players in the group, a lot of people who've moved away from home, and it was very much, he was almost like, not thank you, but it was very much like, it's really good that you want to take notice of us as individuals and us as what goes on behind when we leave the training ground, as well as us as footballers. And I think that's so important. We've got no idea what our athletes are going through when they leave the training ground, or when they leave the gym, or when they leave the pitch. So getting to know them in that environment is only going to make them better when they're performing for us in the gym, on a pitch, and for us on match day. So understanding them as people first will only help them, or only help us develop them as athletes second. And that for me, it's become kind of like my North Star around my coaching philosophy, is know them as individuals first and foremost, and then we worry about them being an athlete. Because if they're not happy as a person, it doesn't really matter what we do in the gym, on the pitch. It doesn't matter.
You mentioned there about the initial conversations that you had with the squad as a whole, with the current squad. Yeah. What were some lessons that you took from previous, when you've got landed opportunities previously and had that first interaction with squads or individuals, whoever it was? What have been some things you've taken away from that initial approach?
So this, I guess, kind of links into when you transition into a role, and I guess I'll be candid here in terms of, so I was fortunate enough to land a position at Wales, head of physical performance, I think head of physical performance, coming in and managing another practitioner, so who had already been there. She'd been there a number of years, highly regarded by the players, And I got burned. I very much went in and like, I'm coming in with a manager. I know best. Let's almost like tear it up and start again. And the players had massive trust in this practitioner, didn't know me from anyone. And I got burned pretty quickly. And my lesson learned there was, okay, let's go in with a bit more of a steady approach and maybe observe what's going on, opposed to, now I know best. Me and the manager coming in, we're changing everything. We need to be successful. So it's almost like, go in, assess the landscape, funnily enough, build some relationships before we start making some change, because we need to see what's going on. We need to know the lay of the land. Before we go in and start trying to say, nah, that's wrong, because there might be lots of really good things, and there was lots of really good things, and I've apologized, and hopefully, we're fine now. So it's almost like, lesson learned, because then, it almost, and in a camp environment, which was there, it almost took me a couple of camps to rebuild that and get back to where we were.
On an international front, and I think this is going to be really interesting off the back of the Euros as well, isn't it? Do you think there are certain practitioners who are more suited to international football and camp-based stuff, and everyday practitioners who are full-time in clubs with players pretty much 24/7, and you get to know them in and out? Because when you were saying about get to know your athletes first, like, know everything, try and get to know everything about them that makes them tick. That's hard to do at a camp, innit? Internationally, when you've got a small window with them. So is there, or can you be both?
So I thought it's a really good question, but I think you can do both, because at a club, as you said, we're with each other all the time. We're traveling up, and I call us a traveling circus. We get on a bus and we go to wherever we're going next. But in an international environment, say it's a 10-day camp, you'll have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. You'll be with each other for 15, 16 hours, and you're just together. So you can build a relationship quite quickly. It's almost like a 10-day window is almost like a month in a club environment, because you go, and then it took me 3-4 days to recover from a camp sometimes, because they're so full on. They're brilliant, but so full on. So I think you can do both, but to be able to there's no off on an international camp, because every time there's nowhere to hide. Like, you don't go home. You don't go home to your husband or your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever. You are on from the moment. I always think about it. The only time you're ever off is when you're in your room, and which is probably 11 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. The moment you walk out of that door, you have to be on, because your player facing, your coach facing off the bat. It takes some getting used to. It took me a few camps to get used to that, but I think everyone can do both. You also, I guess it's what you want to do, really. It's those windows of opportunity, those windows of development are much smaller in an international window. And ultimately, the players they play for their clubs, so we are sometimes having to be able to facilitate. I think so. At Wales, we had 26 players on average from 16 different clubs all over the world. Players in America, players in American collegiate systems, players in Europe, players in Scotland, players in Wales, players in England. So it's how we can almost try and get everyone on an even keel, so the head coach can work with those players to prepare for international competition, which we know is at higher intensity, more axel details, more high-speed running than club football. So it's how we can. I think it's a skill, and again, it's something that it took me a long time, is how we can work with the club staff, build relationships with them, and how we can get pretty much everyone on an even keel pretty quickly, so that the head coach can work on the grass to tactically prepare for international football. So that skill isn't for everyone. You may want to just be able to know, these are my athletes, I'm going to program for them full time. There may be times where I may be able to program little bits within the week, but also I'm having to be respectful of the fact that they're a club player. So I'm having to not drastically change their training load for 10 days, and then they go back into their club environment. They've had a spike or they've had a deload, and then we're putting them at injury risk when they go back to club, and no one needs that.
That's a good point. The other thing I was going to ask around, I know you've worked with the manager before and had experience working closely with the manager. What's your experience been on that in terms of working together to deliver sessions? And there must be a pretty strong relationship there between the two of you.
Yeah. So I guess, so actually the previous two managers I've worked with, so Des at Oxford and Gemma at Wales and at the FA, we got to a point where there was that mutual trust within each other. And it was very much like, how can we work together? And I feel, speaking to some other practitioners, and I feel very, very fortunate in the position I'm in, that there is the implicit trust there in terms of, okay, what do we need physically? What do we need tactically and technically in this week? Building in, say it's a Saturday, and we've got a free week. What do we need to do each day to make sure that we are physically prepared, also technically prepared? And it's really, I love it, because we can almost constrain drills to elicit technical outcomes, but also can we get our high speed running, our accels, our decels, and they're contextual. For me, it's so important. I think, okay, I mean, we're in pre-season and there is a place for some standalone conditioning, but when we're in the season, can we get everything within our drill-based activities? So Des, the coach I work with now, he's very FA with GPS metrics. He understands when we're talking about, you know, zone 5, zone 6, total distance, accels, decels, and we'll work together to design drills. Him and his coaches, actually, the coaching staff around him are brilliant in terms of, okay, what can a possession practice look like to elicit some overload around an accel decel? What can a tactical practice or a wave practice look like, so we can really overload on that high speed running? We actually did a wave practice today, and we got, I think, 11 of the 14 guys in the drill hit 90% of their max velocity. Well, brilliant, because that's a box tick for the week where we know we've hit their max velocity, but it's context specific. It's not just a 40-meter runway where we know we're going to get 90%. Brilliant, but there's no change of direction. There's no scanning. There's no cognitive load on the athlete. So being able to collaborate with the coach, for me, is my favorite part of the job, because we can create drills to maximize everything all the time. That doesn't come overnight. We've got to, again, I've got to know my onions. I've got to be confident in what I'm talking to the coach about. Be confident. You know, his opening line most days is, what do we need physically? If I don't know that, well, we're not going to be able to design a drill to get what we need. So it's understanding where every athlete is at before I walk into a meeting with him and saying, you know, what are our physical outcomes for the day?
Just on that as well, like you alluded to earlier, if you get asked by a gaffer, what do we need physically? Like you say, it's not blagging it, isn't it? And it's going, well, hang on, let me see how the lads report, or let me see how the lads are feeling. I'll get back to you and I'll let you know. And it's that balance.
100%. And it's almost like, okay, we've got a rough guide of what the week looks like, but there's always going to be fluctuations day to day based on what yesterday looks like, what last week looked like, you know, where metrics may be down or up, but also, yeah, understanding, okay, can we fit the narrative of the game plan? So we need to know what we're preparing for. So I need to have a really good understanding of, okay, what is the manager and the coaching staff's game plan? What do we need to prepare our athletes to do? So the game plan under the new manager and then under Des, and then the manager that fell before, there's quite a drastic difference in terms of how he wants his teams to play, how he wants his wingers to play specifically. So I need to have a really good understanding of that to aid in the drill design with the head coach. And then also then how we report. So we need to understand that, okay, global metrics are great, and lots of people understand total distance and total cumulative high speed load, but we also need to know, okay, what's our drill density look like? What are our meters per minute per drill? So we almost then have a drill library when we know, okay, we've got a free week, it's Tuesday, let's push the needle from a high speed running perspective. Well, I can go to the manager and say, well, these are the 5-6 drills we've done this season that have elicited the kind of outcomes we want. Let's work on one of those maybe. And again, straight away, we're not starting afresh every time. We've got a basis to work from, because we're utilizing ultimately his work or the coaching staff's work. And we're saying, we can get these physical outcomes from these drills. Again, if we just produce global reports, well, brilliant, you did 5K today, so what?
Massive. Mate, there's so much in that coaches can take. I've started making a list of notes. I'm going to have to go back through the podcast, I think, back to it, because I feel like you've covered so much, and I really appreciate you doing it, because I think you've spoken to coaches across different experience levels there as well. You know, people can take a lot from literally students not even in positions yet to coaches that are super experienced going into a new role. Like you've mentioned there, I know there's so many other things we can cover, but time has literally flown by. So I really appreciate you doing it. Just wrap us up, Luke, in terms of places to get in touch with you, to follow the stuff that you've got going on. Where would you direct people to go?
So this is something I'm really conscious of that I was awful at forever. So I'm trying to be better at it. So on Twitter, it's just Luke T88. Apology, I think I probably had that Twitter handle for maybe 15 years, but yeah, Luke T88. And then probably LinkedIn, just my name on LinkedIn. I'm going to try and be a bit more active on there. I'm obsessed with Power BI, so I want to share some of the bits I'm trying to do there. So it would be great to hear some people's critiques of what I'm trying to produce.
It'd also be great to get a follow-up episode where we can dive in some stuff around Power BI and maybe a few other topics as well. So no, I really appreciate you doing it. Jordan, have you got any final thoughts?
No, I don't want to take any more time. Class, Luke. Really, yeah. Again, for youngsters, like I said, when I say youngsters, I mean obviously people younger in their careers, but students, and then right the way up, like you say, experienced practitioners. There's definitely some gold dust in there.
I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you for coming on, Luke, and best of luck going into the new season as well.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
So, episode 299 is in the bag, and that was very, very good.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And you know what? Actually, just literally before I came on air, Sam, our coach here, was saying, "Oh, by the way, the podcast's been really, really good of late." And credit to, like, again, obviously they were good before that as well. But I just feel like at the minute, every coach we're getting on, and every practitioner we're getting on, did so much for everyone. And like we kept saying in there, the full range of practitioner, the seasoned vet to, relative newbie. But again, I hate to hammer home the same message. Relationships, it's the key word, that keeps coming back in, and I love that phrase, know your onions. That's really good. I've not really used that one. I'm nicking that one. Gotta know it anyway. Like every student, they need to have the basics. We have to have the basics covered. We need to know what we're doing, but you've got to be able to communicate that. We are people, if you like, people persons, that we've got to be able to please athletes and keep them happy, and if we're asking these athletes to put their bodies on the line and run until they don't want to run anymore, they've got to like you, and they've also got to trust you. And that humility that he was talking about, I think that's a really important message, to say, I messed up there, that warm-up was not very good, next time I'll do it better. And even asking the athletes as well for feedback. What do you think? Should we knock that bit on the head? Yeah, we'll don't do that again. Players buy into that so quickly. So there's so many good points there, and another class episode.
No, I thought it was brilliant. And the big thing without even what he was speaking about, which obviously there's so much to take about, is it's so refreshing getting guests on the podcast. And I know Luke mentioned at the start of the episode, he was like, I don't want to bore you with sort of background and all the rest of it. But the way he spoke and the way he was so open, and he kept referring to experiences, like that is where people learn the most, because it's all the sort of applied knowledge that people have spent years over. This is real life. And I think an episode like that with a practitioner like Luke, you can listen to it and go, right, there's lessons in terms of getting positions. There's lessons in terms of what I do when I land that role. There's also lessons in terms of we talk about building relationships, but how to build those relationships, how to go about that, essentially stay in the role and thrive in the role as well. And that all hopefully leads to what he's experienced last season with a great successful season. And that was something interesting as well, wasn't it? Because I think that's one thing we don't talk about from a staff perspective, is that celebration of success like that. And I know it's probably different for him because it's his club, it's a club he supported, his family's from there. But whatever role you're in, there's a lot, the long seasons, if you get success, it's going to be something that needs to be celebrated. Yes, you then move on and he's on to the new season and championship and trying to stay up in the championship and do well in the championship. But I think it's really important that as well, that we have that sort of celebration of that success. The other thing he mentioned, and I love the story about the blind athlete, around taking the shoes off, getting to know the gym, him obviously offering help which is what anyone would do, isn't it? Like, okay, but then the sort of lesson of going, no, leave me to it. And I think obviously he spoke about it there in terms of the athlete being blind, but you take that to any athlete. He said in it, I've got to let people fail. And there's so many lessons in stories like that, isn't there? That we probably do want to step in too much and go, no, it's not that way, it's this way. Whereas we've got to let them go sometimes, haven't we? And yes, we want to guide them down that path. I brought up parenting as well, because this applies to it perfectly. That you don't want kids to get hurt, or your kids to get hurt, but the way they learn from jumping off a bouncy castle and hurting the leg is that they've got to jump off the bouncy castle and hurt the leg to realize they don't do it again. So there's so much in it. I thought Luke was a great guest, and someone would definitely be looking to get on again.
Yeah, and 100%. And I love that bit. Just to kind of not carry on blabbering on, but letting athletes fail, obviously within reason. Don't injure them. But I've got a great example of that with younger players in the gym when they're in the gym for the first time. When the youngsters, we can lift weights, and lo and behold, one of them's probably going to drop something on the foot. One of them's not going to put a clip on, and the bar's going to flip off. All this sort of stuff. And you just look at them and don't rant and rage. Just look at them and go, "You're not going to do that again now, are you?" And done. Lesson learned, innit? So letting players fail, but also letting them learn from those things. But really, really good. But definitely need them back on. And obviously, when we stop recording, we're just going to catch up there. If we can try and get into international breaks and stuff, just so we can see how pre-season's gone, because he finished on a really good point about the coaching and GPS libraries and stuff. And I was going to ask him, but I know we were conscious on time. Those GPS libraries, he won't need to look at them now, because if you've got the trust with that coach and you've worked with the coach for long enough, what do we need this on this day? We've got these choice of drills, and the coach will probably say, should we do that one? Should we do the 2v2s plus 2? Should we do the wave? Should we do 4v3s? They'll just, and they go, let's do that, and it becomes that instinctive when that relationship's so strong. So I'll be really keen to kind of follow up and see how he felt pre-season's gone, working with the coach he knows well, and what went really well in that time.
Class. Well, I hope all listeners enjoyed it, which I'm sure they did. Send in any feedback anyone's got. It's always good to hear from people. Give us a little share on socials with what you took away from the episode as well, because that's always good to see, and people do that, which is great as well. Just last thing from us, our sponsors make this podcast happen, so go and check them out: Magic Mind, Rezzil, Hydro, and the Good Prep. Next episode is a big one, episode 300. We've got 3 previous guests coming back onto the podcast for a bit of a roundtable chat. Very exciting. As we record this, we're recording tomorrow night. So Jordan, I will speak to you again for episode 300.
Yeah. And just before I leave, and I didn't tell you I was going to say this, but I just want to say a big well done to yourself. 300 episodes, mate. That's I've only come on last 10. So I can't claim that at all, mate. It's all you, and a big well done, because it's been class, and I know a lot of listeners do value it. So here's to 300 more.
100%. Thanks. Means a lot. Cheers, mate.
Class. See you soon.